It all started on a rainy night, the kind that makes you feel like the world outside is a distant memory. I was scrolling through the dark web, a habit I had picked up out of sheer curiosity and boredom. The flickering glow of my computer screen illuminated my small apartment, casting shadows that danced eerily on the walls. That's when I stumbled upon an unusual listing, a doll, described as the perfect companion. The seller's profile was sparse, just a username Shadow Merchant, and a few cryptic reviews. Most were from users who claimed the doll had changed their lives, but not in the way you'd expect. They spoke of strange occurrences, whispers in the night, objects moving on their own, and an unsettling feeling of being watched. Intrigued and unnerved, I found myself drawn to the images of the doll. It had porcelain skin, lifelike eyes that seemed to follow you, and an unsettling smile that sent shivers down my spine. Despite my better judgment, I clicked buy now. The transaction was too quick, and within days, a nondescript package arrived at my doorstep. My heart raced as I opened it. Inside lay the doll, perfectly preserved in its packaging. It felt heavy in my hands as I pulled it out, and for a moment I was struck by an overwhelming sense of dread. I placed it on my shelf, trying to dismiss the feeling that it was somehow alive. That night, as I lay in bed, I heard faint noises coming from the living room. It sounded like soft laughter mixed with whispers. My heart pounded in my chest as I convinced myself it was just my imagination running wild. The next day, I decided to test the doll's capabilities. I stood in front of it and waved my arms around playfully. To my shock, it mirrored my movements perfectly. Every wave and gesture was replicated with eerie precision. I laughed nervously. It was just a toy after all. But as days turned into weeks, things began to escalate. Each night I would wake up to find the doll positioned differently on the shelf, sometimes facing me directly, or even sitting at the edge of my bed as if watching me sleep. My friends noticed my growing obsession with the doll and warned me against keeping it around. "It's just a creepy toy," they said dismissively. But deep down I knew there was something sinister about it. One evening, while hosting a small gathering at my apartment, I decided to show off my new friend as I demonstrated how it mimicked my movements. Laughter filled the room. But then something happened that sent chills down our spines. When everyone stopped moving, the doll continued to sway back and forth as if caught in an invisible breeze. The laughter faded into uneasy silence as we all exchanged glances filled with disbelief and fear. That night marked the beginning of a series of events that would change everything. Little did I know that this doll was not just a reflection of me. It was something far more malevolent, an entity from the depths of the dark web that had come to claim its place in my life. This segment sets up an eerie atmosphere while introducing key elements of suspense and horror related to the doll's origin. If you need further segments or adjustments, feel free to ask. As the days turned into weeks, my fascination with the doll morphed into an obsession. I found myself spending hours in front of it, testing its limits and capabilities. It was as if I had stumbled upon a new friend, one that mirrored my every move and emotion. But with each passing day, the line between companionship and something far more sinister began to blur. At first, I thought it was just a clever mechanism. The doll was designed to mimic my gestures, and I assumed it was simply a product of advanced technology. I would wave my hands, dance around the room, and laugh as it followed suit. My friends, initially skeptical, started to get drawn into my fascination as well. They would come over to witness the spectacle, and we would take turns moving in front of the doll, laughing at its uncanny ability to replicate our actions. But then things took a darker turn. One night, after a particularly long day at work, I returned home feeling drained. As I slumped onto the couch, I noticed the doll sitting silently on the shelf. Its eyes seemed to glint in the dim light of my living room. Feeling an odd sense of comfort, I decided to engage with it once more. "Let's dance," I said jokingly, standing up and swaying my hips. To my astonishment, the doll began to sway back and forth in perfect rhythm with me. My heart raced with excitement. This was beyond anything I had ever experienced. But as I danced, a chill ran down my spine when I noticed that its smile seemed wider than before, almost predatory. That night, sleep eluded me. Every time I closed my eyes, I felt an overwhelming sensation of being watched. The whispers returned too soft and melodic, like a lullaby sung from just beyond the veil of sleep. I tried to convince myself it was just stress playing tricks on my mind. The following day at work, I couldn't shake off the feeling that something was off. My coworkers noticed my distracted demeanor and asked if everything was all right. "Just tired," I replied with a forced smile. But deep down, I knew it was more than that. It was the doll. When I returned home that evening, things escalated further. As soon as I entered my apartment, I felt an oppressive weight in the air. The doll was no longer on the shelf where I had left it. Instead, it sat on my bed, staring at me with those lifelike eyes that seemed to penetrate my very soul. "Okay, this is getting weird," I muttered under my breath as I approached it cautiously. But as I reached out to pick it up, something unexpected happened. It jerked back slightly, as if resisting my touch. I froze in place, heart pounding in my chest. "It's just a toy," I reminded myself again and again. But deep down, fear gnawed at me like a hungry beast. In an attempt to regain control over the situation, I decided to document everything that was happening with the doll. Each night after work, I would write down any strange occurrences or feelings in a journal, a record of what had become an increasingly bizarre chapter of my life. Days passed with little change until one fateful evening when everything spiraled out of control. It started innocently enough. A few friends came over for dinner and drinks. We laughed and reminisced about old times while sharing stories about our lives until someone brought up the doll. "Show us how it works," one friend exclaimed with a mischievous grin. Reluctantly, I agreed and led them to my bedroom where the doll sat ominously on the bed. As soon as we entered the room, an eerie chill swept through the air, a stark contrast to the warmth of our laughter just moments before. I stood in front of the doll and began to move as usual, waving my arms and dancing lightly on my feet. To everyone's amazement, it mirrored me perfectly once again. Laughter erupted from my friends. They were both amused and unnerved by its uncanny ability. But then something changed. As we continued our antics, one friend decided to get bold. "Let's see if it can do more than just mimic," he shouted playfully before stepping forward and striking a pose beside me. To our collective horror, instead of mimicking him or remaining still like before, the doll turned its head slightly towards him, its eyes narrowing as if sizing him up, and then began to mimic his pose perfectly, but with an unsettling twist. Its smile stretched wider than ever before. The laughter died instantly as everyone exchanged uneasy glances. "Okay, that's creepy," another friend muttered under her breath. I felt a knot tighten in my stomach as dread washed over me like ice water. "Let's stop," I said quickly, trying to regain control of the situation. But before anyone could respond, something even more horrifying happened. The lights flickered ominously overhead, as if responding to some unseen force within the room. The atmosphere grew thick with tension. Even laughter couldn't cut through it now. Suddenly, one of my friends pointed towards the doll in shock. "It moved," she gasped. I turned just in time to see its head snap back into position as if nothing had happened, a perfect imitation of stillness once again, but there was no mistaking what we had all seen. "Let's get out of here," someone suggested nervously. We hurried out of my bedroom and back into the safety of the living room where laughter had once filled our hearts, but now hung heavy with fear instead. That night marked a turning point for me, a moment when reality collided violently with something far darker lurking beneath its surface. As each subsequent night passed by without reprieve from these strange occurrences surrounding me, the whispers grew louder, while shadows danced along walls. I began questioning whether this doll truly belonged in this world, or if perhaps it had been summoned from somewhere far more sinister altogether. This segment continues building suspense while exploring how the protagonist's relationship with the doll evolves into something much darker and more terrifying. If you need further segments or adjustments, feel free to ask. The days that followed were a blur of anxiety and dread. I could no longer distinguish between reality and the nightmarish world my life had become. The doll, once a mere curiosity, had morphed into a harbinger of terror. Each night it seemed to grow more powerful, more alive. I could feel its presence even when I wasn't looking at it, an oppressive weight pressing down on my chest. I tried to convince myself that it was just a toy, a clever mechanism designed to mimic movements. But deep down I knew better. The way it had turned its head, the way it smiled wider each time I interacted with it, these were signs of something far more sinister. I began to dread the moment I would return home from work, knowing that the doll awaited me in the shadows. One evening, after a particularly grueling day, I decided enough was enough. I needed to confront whatever was happening. I gathered my courage and sat in front of the doll, which was perched on my bed as always. Its eyes seemed to glimmer in the dim light of my room, almost taunting me. "Listen," I said firmly, though my voice trembled slightly. "I don't know what you are or what you want from me, but this ends now." For a moment, there was silence. The air felt thick with tension, as if the very fabric of reality was holding its breath. Then, without warning, the lights flickered again, plunging the room into darkness before returning to their previous state. The doll remained still, its expression unchanged. "Show yourself," I shouted, frustration boiling over. "If you're real, if you have any power at all, then prove it." Suddenly, a cold breeze swept through the room, sending chills down my spine. The doll's eyes seemed to darken, as if absorbing the light around it. I could hear whispers again, soft and melodic, growing louder, until they filled my mind like a cacophony of voices. "Let us play," they sang in unison. Panic surged through me as I realized that this was no ordinary doll. It was a conduit for something far more malevolent. My heart raced as I stood up and backed away slowly, but before I could escape the room, the doll's head snapped toward me with unnatural speed. "Stay," it commanded in a voice that echoed with authority and malice. I froze in place as an overwhelming sense of dread washed over me. It wasn't just mimicking my movements anymore, it was controlling them. My body felt heavy, as if invisible chains bound me to the spot. "Why are you doing this?" I managed to stammer out. The whispers intensified around me. "You invited us in. You wanted companionship." In that moment of clarity amidst chaos, I remembered the dark web listing the words that had drawn me in like a moth to a flame, the perfect companion. What had started as innocent curiosity had turned into a nightmare beyond comprehension. "I didn't mean it," I shouted desperately. "I just wanted something. Someone." The doll tilted its head slightly, as if considering my words. "You wanted us," it replied, softly yet chillingly. "Now you must play." Suddenly, the atmosphere shifted dramatically. Shadows lengthened and twisted around me like living entities. The walls began to close in, as if they were alive, breathing and pulsating with an otherworldly energy. I fought against the invisible force holding me captive and screamed at the top of my lungs, "Get away from me." With every ounce of willpower left within me, I lunged for the door. Just as I reached for the handle, a powerful force slammed against my back, sending me sprawling onto the floor. As I lay there gasping for breath, I felt something cold brush against my skin. A hand? No, it was just the doll sliding off the bed and landing softly beside me. Its smile widened impossibly as it leaned closer. "Or play with us," it whispered again. In that moment of sheer terror, something inside me snapped. The realization hit hard. This was not just about fear anymore, it was about survival. With adrenaline coursing through my veins like fire, I scrambled to my feet and bolted for the living room. But as soon as I crossed the threshold into that space filled with memories of laughter and warmth, everything changed again. The lights flickered violently before plunging everything into darkness once more. Panic surged anew as shadows danced around me, shapes moving in ways they shouldn't be able to. "Help," I cried out into the void, but received no response, only silence enveloping me like a suffocating shroud. Then came laughter, soft at first, but growing louder until it echoed throughout my apartment like thunderclaps reverberating off every surface. It wasn't just one voice, it was many, taunting and mocking me from every corner. "Play with us. Forever." In desperation, I remembered something from those online forums where people shared their experiences with haunted objects. Salt could repel spirits or entities seeking entry into our world. Racing back into my kitchen while fumbling for anything resembling salt or protection against whatever darkness had invaded my life felt like an eternity. Finally locating a box of coarse sea salt hidden behind jars on a shelf gave me hope, a glimmer of possibility amidst despair. With trembling hands clutching tightly onto that precious box filled with grains meant to ward off evil spirits, I rushed back toward where shadows loomed ominously over furniture, casting grotesque shapes across walls. "Stay away," I shouted defiantly while pouring salt around myself in an improvised circle, a barrier meant to keep whatever forces lurked beyond at bay. The laughter faltered momentarily before erupting again, now tinged with rage. "You think you can escape us?" I felt their anger ripple through air surrounding me like an electric charge, the temperature dropping rapidly until icy fingers clawed at exposed skin, leaving goosebumps along arms. "Leave. You have no power here," my voice rang out louder than ever before, fueled by sheer determination. Suddenly everything went still. The laughter ceased abruptly, leaving only silence hanging heavily between breaths taken too quickly. Then came a low growl emanating from somewhere deep within darkness enveloping room. It resonated through bones, shaking foundations beneath feet planted firmly inside protective circle formed earlier. "What do you want?" My voice quivered slightly but held firm against encroaching dread threatening to consume sanity entirely. A figure emerged slowly from shadows, a grotesque amalgamation of twisted limbs and hollow eyes, reflecting nothing but hunger. "We want your soul," it rasped menacingly, while reaching out towards barrier formed by salt. In that moment, clarity struck like lightning, illuminating darkest corner's mind. This wasn't just about survival anymore, this was about reclaiming control over life stolen away piece by piece since first interaction began. With newfound resolve surging within, I stepped forward, breaking free from protective circle surrounding self. No echoed voices surrounding figure now trembling visibly under weight, conviction radiating outward. "You will not take Maine." And with one swift motion I hurled entire box filled with salt directly towards creature standing before me. As grains exploded upon impact, a blinding flash erupted, filling entire space, blinding everyone present momentarily. When light faded, nothing remained, except remnants scattered across floor where darkness once loomed threateningly overhead. I stood there, panting heavily, heart racing wildly inside chest, feeling warmth return once again, filling void left behind by fear's departure. The doll lay lifeless on ground, its smile now replaced by an expression devoid of life, entirely a mere shell stripped bare, revealing truth hidden beneath surface all along. Realizing victory achieved came at great cost, I knew journey ahead wouldn't be easy either, but finally free from grip darkness held tightly around soul, I stepped outside into world waiting patiently beyond, door left ajar behind. This final segment wraps up the story with a climactic confrontation between the protagonist and the malevolent entity associated with the doll. If you need further adjustments or additional content, feel free to ask. The dawn broke with a soft light filtering through my apartment windows, illuminating the remnants of the chaos that had unfolded the night before. I stood in the center of my living room, still trembling from the confrontation. The air felt lighter, almost ethereal, as if the weight of darkness had finally lifted. But even as I took a deep breath, relief was mingled with a profound sense of loss. The doll lay on the floor where I had thrown it, its porcelain face cracked and lifeless. I approached it cautiously, half expecting it to spring back to life at any moment. But it remained still, an eerie reminder of the horrors I had faced. I picked it up gingerly, feeling an odd mixture of pity and revulsion. It was just a doll, yet it had become a vessel for something far more sinister. I knew I couldn't keep it. It was a relic of a nightmare that I needed to sever ties with completely. With a heavy heart, I placed it in a box and taped it shut, sealing away the memories and terror associated with it. But even as I did so, a nagging thought crept into my mind. What if I hadn't truly defeated whatever dark entity had been unleashed? What if it lingered still, waiting for another opportunity to strike? With those thoughts swirling in my head, I decided to take action. I couldn't simply dispose of the doll, that would be too easy. Instead, I needed to ensure that whatever dark force had been connected to it would never return. So I gathered supplies, salt, candles, and herbs, everything I could find that might help cleanse my space and protect me from lingering malevolence. As dusk approached, I set up a makeshift altar in my living room. The flickering candlelight cast dancing shadows on the walls as I arranged everything meticulously. The salt formed a protective circle around me, while herbs were placed at each cardinal point: sage for purification, rosemary for protection, and lavender for peace. With everything in place, I took a deep breath and began to chant softly under my breath, calling upon any benevolent spirits or energies willing to assist me in this cleansing ritual. As I spoke the words, I felt an energy shift in the room. The air thickened around me as if something was responding. Suddenly the lights flickered again, a reminder of the chaos from the night before, but this time they didn't plunge me into darkness. Instead, they pulsed gently like a heartbeat. My heart raced with both fear and anticipation as shadows danced along the walls. "Show yourself," I commanded firmly, but with an underlying tremor of uncertainty. For a moment, there was silence. Then came a whisper, a soft breeze that caressed my cheek like a lover's touch. "You are stronger than you know," it murmured. I closed my eyes and focused on that voice, willing myself to embrace whatever energy was present, rather than cower from it. "I want peace," I declared loudly enough for anyone or anything to hear. "I want you to leave me alone." The shadows shifted again, but began to recede rather than advance. The oppressive weight in the room started to lift slowly, as if acknowledging my strength and resolve. "Let go of your fear," the voice urged gently this time. "You have conquered what was meant to control you." With each word spoken by that unseen presence, warmth flooded through me like sunlight breaking through storm clouds. The candle flames danced wildly, as if celebrating my newfound courage. After what felt like hours but was likely only minutes, the energy in the room finally settled into a calm stillness. The shadows retreated fully, even the air felt lighter, now devoid of previous tension. Exhausted yet exhilarated by this experience, I opened my eyes, slowly realizing how much power lay within me all along. Once finished with ritual, I took time reflecting upon journey traveled thus far, understanding lessons learned about strength, found amidst darkness faced head-on. But even after cleansing ritual completed, I knew deep down scars remained, memories etched forever into fabric life lived until now. Days turned into weeks as life gradually returned back towards normalcy, yet remnants lingered behind like echoes haunting corridors, memory filled with laughter shared among friends once more. I avoided discussing events surrounding Dahl with anyone, fearing judgment or disbelief would only serve to undermine experiences endured alone. Yet despite efforts made, an unease settled within heart, a nagging feeling something wasn't quite right. Then one evening, while scrolling through social media, an article caught eye: dark web dolls, the dangers lurking behind innocent facades. Curiosity piqued, I clicked through, reading accounts from others who'd experienced similar phenomena, tales filled with horror showcasing how easily innocence could twist into nightmares. As each story unfolded, I noticed common threads weaving throughout, narratives shared among victims, each detailing encounters involving dolls purchased online, each claiming they too had faced entities far beyond comprehension. A chill ran down spine, realizing connection between those stories and mine. I quickly scrolled down until reaching comments section, where users shared thoughts regarding article published, many expressing disbelief, while others shared warnings against engaging with dark web altogether. But then one comment stood out amongst noise. A user named Lost Soul wrote, "If you think you're safe after getting rid of your doll, think again." My heart raced again as dread settled over me like fog rolling in from sea. "What does that mean?" I whispered aloud, feeling panic rise within chest, constricting tightly around lungs. Determined not let fear consume, I quickly typed back, asking for clarification, but received no response. Days passed without hearing anything further from Lost Soul, leaving me feeling unsettled once more. Then one fateful night, while lying awake unable to sleep, a soft sound broke silence surrounding room, a faint whisper echoing through darkness like wind rustling leaves outside windowpane. "Play with us." My heart dropped into stomach, realizing voice belonged unmistakably to doll long since sealed away inside box tucked away beneath bed. "No," I shouted defiantly, sitting bolt upright, feeling adrenaline surge through veins once more. But then came laughter, soft yet sinister, echoing throughout space surrounding me, reminding how easily innocence could twist into nightmares once more. "Play with us," echoed again, sending chills racing down spine, reminding how easily darkness could creep back into life uninvited. Feeling cornered by shadows lurking just beyond reach, I knew then that battle wasn't over yet, it had only just begun. This fourth segment delves deeper into the aftermath of the protagonist's confrontation with the doll and explores lingering fears and unresolved tensions stemming from their experience. If you need further adjustments or additional content, feel free to ask. The nights that followed were filled with a haunting silence, but the whispers had returned, echoing through my mind like a relentless chant. "Lie with us," the phrase became an unsettling mantra, a reminder that whatever darkness I thought I had banished was still lurking, waiting for the right moment to strike. I tried to push the thoughts away, focusing on my daily life, work, friends, and mundane tasks, but the unease never fully dissipated. Each creak of the floorboards or rustle of leaves outside my window sent shivers down my spine. I could feel eyes watching me, and every time I glanced at the box containing the doll, a wave of dread washed over me. One fateful evening, unable to bear the tension any longer, I decided to confront my fears head-on. I retrieved the sealed box from beneath my bed and placed it in front of me. My heart raced as I unsealed it, each movement deliberate yet trembling with trepidation. Inside lay the doll, its cracked porcelain face still eerily serene. "You think you can escape us?" a voice whispered from nowhere and everywhere at once. I felt a chill run through me as shadows flickered at the corners of my vision. "No," I shouted defiantly. "You have no power over me." But as I stared into the doll's lifeless eyes, something shifted within me. The air grew thick with anticipation. It was as if the room itself held its breath. I realized that this confrontation was not just about the doll, it was about reclaiming my life from whatever darkness had seeped into it. With renewed determination, I lifted the doll out of its box and held it firmly in my hands. "You will not control me," I declared, feeling a surge of power coursing through me. Suddenly, the lights flickered violently once more, and laughter echoed around me, mocking and sinister. But this time, instead of fear, I felt anger bubbling within me. "I am not afraid," I yelled into the darkness. As if responding to my defiance, the laughter ceased abruptly. The shadows receded slightly, allowing a sliver of light to break through. In that moment of clarity, I understood this was my battle to win or lose. "I will end this," I vowed, gripping the doll tighter as a surge of energy enveloped me. The confrontation had only just begun. This fifth segment sets up a climactic moment where the protagonist prepares for another confrontation with the dark forces associated with the doll. If you need further adjustments or additional content, feel free to ask.